Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio, Sinoland. Bear with me, I have a bad head cold and a sore throat. But as Noel Coward said, the show must go on. Exposé. Make no mistake, the two Michaels, Canada's Kovrig and Spavor, were caught red-handed spying against China and Korea. Here is all you need to know. Pictured above, the West's big lie propaganda machine, the BLPM, worked tirelessly to brainwash the world that the two Michaels were innocent victims, cynically used by Baba Beijing for a prisoner swap with Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou. The fact is, they were guilty as sin of spying for Western Empire. Read on. Note before starting, a slightly edited version of this expose was published on Covert Action magazine. I hope you will support their mission. This link, and there's tons, so go down into the description below for all audio-visual fans if you want to investigate further. In the beginning, and there's a picture, Meng Wanzhou, all smiles, going to Vancouver Airport to return home. On 1 December 2018, Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou was arrested at the Vancouver Airport by Canadian authorities at the behest of the U.S. government on trumped-up fraud charges involving Iran. She ended up being under house arrest for 1,028 days, whereupon she was freed on 24 September 2021 to return home as a national hero to rapturous popular applause. During her long incarceration, there was moral outrage among the Chinese nation that the whole ordeal was nothing more than extortion to punish Huawei and extract information from it. The country's people calling it a kidnapping and imprisonment of a hostage. Many non-Chinese around the world agreed, while Uncle Sam's imperial ambitions did not pan out. On 10 December 2018, two Canadian citizens were arrested in China, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, later getting coined the moniker the Two Michaels. The Chinese government charged them with espionage, whereupon they went on trial. On 11 August 2021, Spavor was sentenced by court to 11 years imprisonment, all his assets in China seized, the equivalent of 50,000 renminbi, and eventual deportation for spying, with Kovrig's court case continuing. There was the usual greater-than-thou moral outrage in the West, as Beijing was accused of cynically and calculatedly taking them into custody in response to Meng's apprehension to use as pawns in a potential swap. The two Michaels were celebrities and national heroes and still are, especially when they were sent back home on 24 September 2021, the same day as Meng's release. This confirmed in the minds of most Canadians that the two Michaels were in fact arrested as pieces on the geopolitical chessboard and that the charges they were spies were bogus. However, this is not true. The two Michaels were very guilty of espionage against the Chinese and DPRK, North Korea, and as this expose will amply show. Next subtitle, background noise, and the stars of this expose picture the two Michaels, Spavor on the left and Kovrig on the right. One claim the West very likely got right about the arrest of the two Michaels is that Beijing did apprehend them as leverage for Meng Wanzhou. When dealing with Uncle Sam, the world's self-appointed imperial globocop, totally above international laws, it was a smart move. Balance. Yin and yang. Just as probable is that the Chinese Ministry of State Security, their MSS, that's the equivalent of their CIA, had all the information they needed on Kovrig and Spavor and were biding their time to see if any local citizens were cooperating. Since intelligence information was being transmitted across the DPRK border and beyond, we can surely assume their North Korean homologue, the Reconnaissance General Bureau, was also enjoying the show. The fact that the two Michaels' espionage activities were, quote, second tier, end of quote, as defined by Chinese sources, even amateurish, suggests having them in the field was not terribly worrying for both countries. They were definitely not in league with super spies like Kim Philby and Aldrich Ames. Next subtitle, Western Empire goes to bat for Kovrig and Spavor. And there's a picture. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, standing, was not alone in using the two Michaels as political fodder to get reelected this year, all jumping on the, quote, free the two Michaels plus China is evil, end of quote, bandwagon. While the two Michaels were relatively unknown outside China, this did not stop the Canadian establishment and mainstream media garnering support around the world, officially 58 countries. Hundreds from the who's who of politics, diplomacy, academia, and think tanks came out publicly to demand the immediate release of Kovrig and Spavor for what Canadian Prime Minister called, quote, arbitrary detention, end of quote. In the mosh pit of Western electoral politics, Canadian notables on both the left and right stood on their soapboxes to lambast quote, authoritarian and opaque, end of quote, China and their mistreatment behind bars. Soon after moving to the White House, President Joe Biden added this propaganda optic, stating that, quote, human beings are not bartering chips, end of quote, which is a macabre hoot considering Guantanamo's torture prison and CIA black ops rendition centers around the world. In fact, the two Michaels were, by all measures, well treated. They were allowed in-person and online ambassadorial and consular visits, phone calls and letters back home with family, were well fed and got good medical care, as well as having ample chances to read books and exercise. If only Western prisoners, political prisoners like Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning were so lucky. Next subtitle, sorry, all espionage trials are, quote, opaque, end of quote. And pictured above, this is all we got to see of Chelsea Manning's trial, drawings by security-cleared artists. It is common practice around the world for intelligence-related court procedures to be held in secret. The other laughable Western accusation was that Kovrigs and Spavor's court trials were opaque since China did not allow Western witnesses to attend to verify a, quote, fair trial, end of quote. Since when are espionage cases open for all the world to witness? Of course all countries are not going to divulge this to foreign enemies. I could fill pages of Western spy trials that never saw the light of day. This is not small claims court in Omaha, Nebraska. Next subheading. Let's start with low-hanging color revolution fruit. Michael Kovrig and the International Crisis Group. Pictured above, ICG webpage with its list of targeted regions and countries in Asia. They have an affinity for countries that cooperate with China. Michael Kovrig's CV starts out in innocent fashion. According to his LinkedIn page, an English literature diploma from the University of Toronto, 1989 to 1994. He then studied French at Paris Sorbonne University, 1995. From there until 2001, Kovrig is a blank page, whereupon he went to New York's Columbia University, getting a Master's in International Affairs, 2001 to 2003. He then dropped off the radar until getting some training certificates at the United Nations and New York University, 2006, 2007. He immediately went to work for the UN Development Group, the UNDP, mostly in Africa, but also Asia, 2007 to 2010. Then a short stint for the G8 and G20 summits in 2010. So far, so good. His educational and work experience till here could be many others who work in international development and relations. He then seems to have gone in a more geopolitical direction while joining the Canadian Foreign Service as Senior Desk Officer for its International Security Branch 2010 to 2012, where he coordinated a network of fellow diplomats in this sector, based in Ottawa. International security means guaranteeing the survival of one's country, involving military intervention and treaties. Now that's a job Zbigniew Brzezinski could cut his teeth on. Kovrig apparently turned some heads, becoming in Beijing a Canadian Embassy First Secretary and Vice Consul, higher than an entry-level attaché, and below Counselor and Ambassador. This was in 2014 to 2016. In military ranking, it's the same as Lieutenant Colonel, not a bad jump up. During this stint, he studied and became functional in Mandarin. Next subtitle, The Security Plot Thickens with Rhodium Group and the Atlantic Council. Pictured above, the Atlantic Council is a house of neoliberal, ultra-hawk, Cold War warrior horrors. Look no further than Hillary Clinton and Henry Kissinger for starters, headlining a deep roster of imperial psychopaths. Seems like Michael Kovrig drank their evil Kool-Aid. Then, in 2016, he seems to have become a China analyst with the Rhodium Group, which specializes in gun-for-hire research on China, India, energy, and advanced economies. Rhodium's big Sino project is the Atlantic Council's multi-year China Pathfinder project. Interestingly, on Kovrig's LinkedIn page for this gig, we only have the job title of Consultant on Geopolitical Risk, Government Relations, and Strategic Communication, 2016 to present, but no entity. Trying to hide something, Michael? Then pictured above, Rhodium Group is one of thousands of popularly known Washington, D.C. Beltway bandits who are lobbying NGO and research organizations hired mostly by Western deep state and the big lie propaganda machine to spin their webs of ersatz nobility and evangelical righteousness to impose on all the world's peoples. Michael, maybe is it because of the Atlantic Council? Bingo! With ultra-rabid Cold War warrior directors like Henry Kissinger, Mark Esper, Secretary of Defense, David H. Petraeus, CIA Director, Michael Chertoff, Department of Homeland Security, and Generals Wesley Clark, Serbia and Kosovo Command, and James Cartwright, Joint Chiefs of Staff, among scores more, including James Baker, Ashton Carter, Robert Gates, Leon Panetta, Colin Powell, William Perry, Condoleezza Rice, and William Webster. Need I say more? Yikes! My head is spinning just writing this list. It is worse than a real-life Doctor Strangelove movie. Next subtitle, Kovrig jumps into George Soros's lap. Pictured above, color revolution financier and veteran sinophobe, George Soros founded the International Crisis Group and continues to be a big backer. Their byline, quote, working to prevent conflict worldwide, end of quote, is pure Orwellian doublespeak. With mentorship and inspiration like that, it was not a big jump for Kovrig to become International Crisis Group's, abbreviated ICG, top dog in Northeast Asia, meaning China and North Korea, starting in 2017. ICG is not just another humdrum NGO. Founded in 1995 with money from George Soros and his color revolution cookie cutter, Open Society, ICG has been at the forefront of Western-backed subversion and sabotage across the planet. Its ongoing funding is like a who's who of the CIA's storefront National Endowment for Democracy, the NED, names including Carnegie, Koch or Koch, the Koch brothers, Ford, Luce, MacArthur, and Rockefeller, among others, pumping millions of dollars annually into its many misdeeds. Not only that, but many NATO governments chip in as well. ICG's directors include cross-pollinating and similar neoliberal, ultra-hawk, fundamentalist directors at the Atlantic Council. ICG cut its color revolution chops in Yugoslavia, and like the CIA's Gene Sharp, hides behind the Orwellian doublespeak of, quote, peaceful conflict resolution, end of quote, when in fact it means causing violent uprisings and government overthrows. From there, you name it, and ICG has been there: Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Palestine, Syria, and all across Latin America, Africa, and Asia, seeming to target countries that have good relations and cooperative development with China. Where China goes, so does ICG. Lately, the ICG has been helping destabilize Ethiopia and its Tigray region, a huge cooperator country with China, while also aiming to cause misery and suffering in next-door Eritrea, a proud, independent, Cuba-styled socialist country. Next subtitle, Kovrig plays a poor James Bond in China. Pictured above, Michael Kovrig playing out his James Bond fantasies in China? It didn't work out as planned. As the new ICG point man for the region, where he remains on their website, Kovrig moved to Hong Kong. According to informed Chinese sources, Kovrig entered China 2017-2018 under the guise of a businessman and false pretext of commerce, all the while still getting his Canadian diplomat salary as a government employee of Canada. Did he think that the very thorough Chinese MSS wasn't watching him like an anti-imperial red hawk, starting in Hong Kong and every step of the way? During his time in China, Kovrig traveled to Jilin, which it borders the DPRK, Shanghai, Beijing, and other areas, using his associates, Chinese, foreign, we don't know, to collect a cache of national security-related information, writing analytical reports on it all, and presumably sending it all back home. According to China's 2015 national security law, this was defined as second-tier state secrets and intelligence. Equally egregious, the Canadian embassy must have known that Beijing proposed a foreign NGO, sometimes abbreviated FNGO, control law in 2015, which was available for the whole world to see online and comment on, whereupon it was passed by the National People's Congress, the NPC Standing Committee, on 28 April 2016. It is aptly named the Management, quote, Management of Foreign Non-Governmental Organizations Law, end of quote, and its intention was to bring to heel the myriad CIA, MI6, DGSE, BND, Soros, government overthrowing window fronts used by the West to destroy its perceived enemy countries. China had over 7,000 FNGOs running amok around the country, and the law was long overdue. The law is very thorough and explicit, which can be studied here. Well, I did an article where I translated key passages into English. Coming into force on 1 January 2017, ICG wouldn't get past the color rev gate and did not apparently try to officially register under the new rules. Working for counter-revolutionary ICG, Rhodium Group, and getting paid by Ottawa. Is this why Kovrig entered China from Hong Kong for 2 years, pretending to be a civilian Canadian businessman? I suspect MSS took a gander at ICG's website with Kovrig's face smirking from afar. Michael John Kovrig was a second-tier James Bond. Nevertheless, he was still an anti-China spy, and as we shall see, an anti-DPRK one as well. Next subtitle. Michael Spavor was Kovrig's across the Yalu River partner in crime. Pictured above, those were the days when Michael Spavor was DPRK leader Kim Jong-un's high-fiving buddy, and then he flushed it all away. Fellow Canadian Michael Spavor's story is much more colorful and entertaining, while Kovrig seems to have gotten smitten with the Atlantic Group's anti-communist socialist pro-global capitalist agenda via his work with Rhodium Group. It is hard to fathom why Spavor would go down the same route, considering all that he had going for himself. His interest in Korea started with a visit to Seoul in the late 90s, where he apparently became smitten by the intrigue north of the 38th parallel. According to his LinkedIn page, Spavor got a BS in International Relations at the University of Calgary, 2002 to 2007. This overlapped with a research program in political science and international trade at Kangwon National University in South Korea, 2006 to 2008. Through all this, Spavor went on to live in Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, for 6 months in 2005, working as a teacher through the offices of a Canadian NGO. He then worked in Seoul as deputy director of the Korean Tourist Organization, 2008 to 2010, and from there became director of Pyongyang Project based in Yanji, Jilin Province, China. This city being the Yanbian Korean Autonomous Prefecture, seat of government in China, 2010 to September 2013. The NGO Pyongyang Project had just been set up as a vehicle for cross-cultural education and language programs between DPRK and Canada. Next subtitle, Spavor goes big time with NBA's Dennis Rodman and company. Pictured above, Dennis Rodman, Kim Jong-un, and Michael Kovrig in DPRK, with Kim's English interpreter in between. It was here that Spavor's Korean work became celebrated. Starting in January 2013, he began moonlighting in cross-border exchanges, bringing NBA star Dennis Rodman to meet leader Kim Jong-un in DPRK in September 2013. Irish bookmaker Paddy Power's billfold was enlisted to bankroll it all. Since then, Hall of Famer and 5-time NBA champion Rodman has visited DPRK 5 times while meeting with Kim 3, even bringing a number of fellow roundball stars and Harlem Globetrotters to play friendly games with the North's best. Spavor was on a roll, also organizing visits by Canadian National Hockey League players to come over for similar exhibition matches, as well as promoting DPRK's first ski resort, Masik Pass, for international tourism. Spavor also helped with the North's Olympic Committee plans and found the time to oversee restoration of Pyongyang's 6th century Yongwang Pavilion, getting funding from the Dutch royal family's Prince Claus Fund. Not only that, but he apparently helped facilitate the official visits to the DPRK by former President Donald Trump and his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Next subtitle, ngopectu Cultural Exchange. Pictured above, Michael Spavor's Pectu Cultural Exchange Facebook page featuring a smiling DPRK Army captain. Everybody knows it's best to avoid taking pictures of military subjects when traveling overseas. It is unclear when. Its Facebook page was created in 2015 and its website is down, but Spavor founded his own NGO, Pectu Cultural Exchange, as a way to promote cross-border cooperation with DPRK, especially in trade and tourism. Sometimes written as the plural exchanges, its Instagram page, still up and running, makes for excellent viewing. Naming his NGO with this moniker was a surefire way to win the hearts of all Koreans. Mount Pektu is considered the birthplace of the Korean people, whereupon the legendary demigod founder King Tangun created the first kingdom of Kojoseon. To this day, Mount Pektu is an active, heavenly lake-filled volcano and an immensely popular tourist spot just across DPRK's northern border with China. It may seem odd that Spavor chose to set up shop in Dandong, China, right across the Yalu River. Nonetheless, it's not totally off the mark. He had already worked in Yanji, China, for Canadian NGO Pyongyang project, so likely had a good system down to work in both countries. China offers much more access to the internet, and flights to DPRK usually transit through Beijing anyway. People all over the world who live and work on international borders do the cross-down commute for variety and change of pace. Pictured above, the narrow, shallow Yalu River is all that separates China from DPRK, and with vehicle and train bridges connecting them all along the border, it is an open secret that massive trade and movement of people takes place across the line. Pictured above is the Dandong Sinuiju crossing, Michael Spavor's Sino-Korean stomping grounds. Dandong is a bustling trading city of 2.5 million with the usual excellent Chinese infrastructure, public transportation, and urban social life. It is connected by vehicle and train bridges across the narrow and shallow Yalu River, with Sinuiju having a more modest small-town population of 350,000. Would you rather live in Topeka or Kansas City? Not only that, but Sinuiju is only 226 kilometers by car from Pyongyang on DPRK's very good highway system, about a 1.5-hour drive. While Yanji is the government seat of China's Korean minority, all along the Chinese border live over 2.5 million ethnic Koreans, both Chinese and from the north, thanks to one of the most porous commercial and trading borders anywhere. Call it the Yalu River Bazaar. Next subtitle. And then it all went south. Pardon the geopolitically correct pun. Pictured above, Michael Spavor, photo of a Chinese Belt and Road Initiative port project in DPRK involving Russia. He must have taken many similar shots of critical infrastructure. Kovrig was truly in the proverbial catbird seat. The world was his kimchi oyster. The sky across the 38th parallel was the limit. So what the hell happened to inspire Spavor to become a low-grade spy for Empire? Like his sidekick Kovrig, this Michael was reduced to taking photos of Korean military parades along with Sino-Korean Belt and Road Initiative BRI infrastructure projects. A muckraking Canadian investigative journalist, Amy McPherson, similar to American Greg Palast, did some good research on Spavor. In her long Twitter feed, there are photos Spavor took in DPRK of soldiers at a small military parade. Ngopectu Cultural Exchange's Facebook page has a nice photo of a smiling army captain. While it is never advisable to photograph anything military in any country, Spavor must have been trying to dig deeper than that to be accused of spying. While his and Kovrig's trials were closed to public, one tidbit was revealed in the Chinese media. Quote, Spavor's, quote, research, end of quote, involved wrapping mobile phones in plastic and rubber and burying them at the base of a particular tree on the bank of the Yalu River. Was this information picked up by a Chinese national subversive who has surely been apprehended since 2018? Clearly, Spavor was up to no good. It would be much easier on the Chinese side to expedite digital information via the internet and data clouds than the relatively closed DPRK. As well, the fact that Spavor was living in Dandong and Kovrig was traveling in and out all over China, making it very possible for them to rendezvous there and ferry digital files back to Hong Kong. Two Canadian businessmen meeting together would be quite normal, and it has been reported that they were good friends. With the Ron Son Special Economic Zone being a high development priority, also just inside the DPRK along the Chinese and Russian borders, Spavor was actively involved in its trade fairs. Given that China and Russia are the biggest investors in this North Korean SEZ, projects like that would be of special interest to ICG Northeast Asia Senior Advisor Kovrig. Michael Peter Todd Spavor could have gone down in history as a daring uniter of DPRK with the rest of the world, having a laudatory epithet on his gravestone as a citizen diplomat who made a positive difference for the lofty ideals of world peace. Instead, he decided to be a low-level wannabe Keystone Cop spy. Why? Was he compromised via imperial extortion, bribery, or blackmail? We will probably never know. Next subheading, a look back on the bizarre story of the two Michaels. Pictured above, free our spies! Free our spies! While Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou's loss of freedom for nearly 3 years was an unjustified imperial outrage, it is hard to feel too sorry for Kovrig and Spavor. They made foolish, real-life choices to spy for Western Empire and got caught red-handed. Their 1,000 days behind bars in China can only elicit crocodile tears at best. Ditto any Chinese or Korean nationals who may have joined in their second-tier high crimes. While Kovrig's diplomat-turned-spook trajectory was more classic, Spavor destroying an amazing professional CV and life story leaves one speechless. Next subheading, Postscript. Oh yeah, there's that other Canadian behind bars in China. Pictured above, Robert Schellenberg in Chinese court. Another lesser-known Canadian is in prison in China, Robert Schellenberg, who has been sentenced to death for drug smuggling. Large scale, like trying to send 227 kilograms of methamphetamine from China to Australia, hiding plastic pellets in car tires. That's a big-time haul. What is so laughable about Canadians getting their panties in a wad over his death sentence is that back home, Schellenberg had been convicted 11 times for drug and DUI offenses, going to jail twice, 3 counts of drug dealing, doing another year behind bars, then 4 more drug convictions, and 16 months in the slammer. That's a total of 18 drug offenses. All this happened right up to the time he went to China in 2014 to do his deal of the century. Yo, Canada! Why was this perp not kept behind bars long before flying to Dalian, China? He apparently had addiction problems. Did the state try to get him help to break his habit? At least put him in a mental hospital to get him off the streets and away from steering wheels. In the United States, poor people shoplift, jaywalk, or sell dime bags of drugs. 3 strikes, and they can rot the rest of their lives in prison. Yet Canada lets a very serious drug dealer spend 2002 to 2014 pushing this stuff. Sanctimonious Canadians pleading leniency for Schellenberg takes the hypocritical cake. This is Jeff J. Brown signing out. Thank you.